If you would like to see how this 6-piece dress is made without patterns, stay tuned.
Welcome to the Learn to Sew Academy channel. Please remember to subscribe. Thank you.
Hello, welcome back to a new video. In this video, I'm going to be making this 6-piece dress without patterns. And these are the measurements that I'm going to be using. The shoulder from here to here, the bust point, that is from the shoulder to the fullest part of the bust line. So from shoulder to bust line. The bust span, this is from here to here. It's also called the apex, and you can also call it nipple to nipple because that's just what this is going to be. You'll also need the underbust, that's the circumference right under the bust line. And then you need the aft length, that's going to be from the shoulder down to the waistline. You're also going to need the waist measurement, that's the circumference of the waist, the dress length, the sleeve length, and the sleeve round. Fold your fabric into two as you see me do here. You're going to fold it, putting into consideration how wide you want the flare to be in each panel. I have measured the full length of the dress and I drew a line right there to the right of this video just to show me where the length starts from. So all my measurements is going to start from that line that I have there. Now I won't be putting a lot of deep markings on this fabric because it is a white lace fabric. So pardon me for that, but just follow along. It's very easy and I'm going to make it as simple as possible. But just note that I'm starting my measurements from that line. It's going to be my baseline. This bust span I'm using is 6. So when you divide that into 2, that is going to give you 3. And then I'm going to add half an inch for my seam allowance. You can do 0.75. So from the edge here, I'm going to measure that. Next, I'm going to measure the bust span, which is what I have here, 8.5. Because the bust span is 8 plus half, that's 8.5. And then I'm going to measure the underbust. The underbust I'm using here is 11 plus half. That'll be 11.5. The half is my sewing allowance. And I'm also going to measure my aft length, which is 14.5, which is right here. When you start to shape this, the focus is going to be on the bust point, on the bust, and the aft length. So take note of that. Because this is a lace fabric, I'm not able to make the shock marks too deep. So I'm just making light marks. But follow along and you'll be able to understand what I'm doing. So what I'm going to be doing now is I go down to the underbust and I'm going to go in by 0.75. Usually I would do between 1 and 1.5 inches, but because this is for a teenager, I'm not going to be going too deep in when I shape it. So I'm going to be doing 0.75 right there at the underbust area. And then I'll go further down to where I have the aft length and I'll go down by 0.75 as well. So again, I'm measuring the aft length from where my shoulder starts from, and that is that point right there, and I'm going to measure the 0.75. And I want to join those 2 points together. Now connect where you have marked the new underbust to the new aft length measurement. That is where you have the 0.75 measurement that you went in by. So next, now we're going to join from the bust point and join out with a slant to where you have the underbust measurement. Now we come to the top where we at the beginning of the dress, and I just want to make a slant from that bust point. Again, remember we had the bust point right here, we have the underbust, and we have the aft length. So I'm shaping it now. So this is what we have now. At the bust point, I'm going to slant it in a little and join it to the top. Now if you're doing a for an adult size, you can come in like 1 inch over here, or 1.5, whatever you want to do. You can come in by 1 inch, you can measure it here, and then you join it from the bust point up to the shoulder area. So I'm just going to slant it. I'm going to make my little less than 1 inch, because again this is going to be for teenager. So I'm going to make sure this is not too pointy, so I'm just giving it some curve. So this is the shape I have, like that, like that. Again, this is my half length. Now from here is where I'm going to now draw my line all the way to the bottom, depending on how wide I want my bottom to be. Again, this is the front panel. I'm still going to do the side panel, so you put that into consideration when you're doing your flare here. So it's going to depend on how flared you want it to be. Okay, so I'm just going to do what I have here is about, this is like 14, and remember I'm going to be sewing it, so my seam allowance will be factored in as well. And now I'm going to cut this part out. So this is the center front panel. I'm going to do the shoulder and the neckline and the armhole after I've cut all the pieces and joined them together. Next, we're going to cut the sides. To cut the sides, we're going to factor in what we already cut here. Whatever the difference is from what we have cut here and our total measurement, that's what we're going to cut for the side. To make the side, we fold into two again. The one you cut for the center is going to be like a template. We're going to place it on this. All right. But when you place it, you want to make sure that you're going to have enough for the hip measurement. And then what is going to happen is this is going to be one side right here. It's going to be one side of your fabric, what you have right here. Then the other side too is going to also have this shape that we have here. It's going to be slanted on the other side. That is why you want to make sure that you have enough fabric over here. So with what I have here, I'm going to extend this fabric some more so that I can have enough fabric on, I can have enough slant on this side. Now I want to align it, make sure the slant is aligned well to the bottom of the dress. So this is what I have right now. Now we're going to cut this side exactly the same way that we have this. All right, so that's going to be one side. That's the side that's going to join to the center. Now we folded this into two, so we are making the two sides, the right and the left side, together. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to now measure. Again, we're going to be working with the bust point, the under bust, the half length, and this time we're going to introduce the hip measurement into this. And to get the hip measurement, we're going to use between 7 to 8 inches from the half length measurement, so depending on the height of the person. So what we're going to do now is we're going to now look at what we have for our bust. When we come to the bust point, we know that we already cut out this part, so we're going to look at whatever the difference is between what we need and what we already cut out. So right here we Remember that we cut out 3 inches minus the allowance, so it's going to be 3 inches here. Now our bust measurement is 31 inches. When you divide 31 by 4, you're going to have 7.75. So we need, for our bust measurement, we need it to be 7.75. So again, we're going to do that from the bust point. So I'm starting from here, all right, from where we have this cut right here. That's where we're going to start to measure from. So I'm looking for 7.75, and we know that this is already 3. So 7.75 minus 3 will give us 4.75. So what we need there is 4.75, and then I'm going to add 2 inches to that. So I'm looking at 6.75. So that is what you want to measure here, 6.75. We're going to do likewise for the underbust right here. Again, I don't want to put too much marking on the white fabric. So the underbust we have right here is 3, but we are going to take away the seam allowance. So we're going to be working with 2.5 right here. Now for the underbust, the circumference for the underbust is 27. When you divide 27 by 4, that will give you 7. 7 minus the 2.5. We're looking at 4.5. So again, we are going to measure 4.5 here. And I'm going to add 2 more to that. That will give me 6.5. So we have done the bust. We've done the underbust. We're going to work on the waist. So the waist we have is 26 inches. If we divide that by 4, we'll have 6.5. So I'm just confirming my waistline. So you're going to do the same thing for the waist. You just want to measure that. And again, you look at what your total waist measurement is. You divide that by 4. And then whatever your answer is, you take the measurement that you measured here, you remove it from that. You measure the balance of that and add your extra 2 inches. From that waistline, you're going to be doing another slant because you're trying to form your flare, but you also want to make sure that you have enough for the hip. So from the waistline, you measure down to where the hip will be, and then you want to check to make sure you're going to have actually more than you need for the hip. So that is looking good. And then at the end of my dress, my slat here is 13 inches. If you like, you can also do 13 inches or you can do less. So my side here is just 10 inches on that side, and that should be enough for me. So I'm gonna go from this waistline and I'm gonna draw it all the way to the end. From that waistline to the end. I'm just drawing a straight line at that edge. So from here where I have my bust point, I'll just draw it all the way straight, because again, I'm not going to be shaping it now. After I'm done joining the pieces back together, I'll shape the shoulder, I'll shape the neckline and the armhole at that time. So now I'm going to cut this out. So this is the front. I'm going to use a safety pin to mark which side of the side panel I will join to the center front. So this is the center front panel, and then this goes on one side. You can see the safety pin there. That helps me to know which part to join to the center. So we just we join that together all the way from the top to the end. And then the second side is going to go on the other side of the center panel. So again, I'm using my safety pin to identify which parts I'm joining together. I want to use this paper to explain what you do with the back of the dress, just to bring a better clarity. When you cut the back of the dress, you're either going to use two open edges for the back because you're going to have a zipper, or you can also fold it like that, but when you're done you're going to cut it into two so that it's open because you're going to have zippers right there. So what's going to happen, let's assume this is your fabric and you folded it like I was explaining earlier. You're going to have 2 inches for your zipper allowance, so 1.5 to 2 inches. Now I'm not using an accurate measurement here, but let's assume that this is our 2 inches right here. Now let's assume this is the 2 inches that I have here for my zipper allowance. So what you're going to use for the back is the bust span. That's what you're going to be using. Whatever you calculated the bust span to be, you're going to divide it by 2, just like we did in the front. So let's assume that this is our bust span right here. So you're going to measure that all the way down. I'm just going to draw a straight line and assume that's the bust span. Before you do that, you want to look for your half length. So let's assume this is the half length right here. All these are just assumptions. They are not perfect measurement. So you measure your half length, and then from here to here will be the bust span. All right. So you draw a straight line from the top to where your bust span is. All right. You remember when we did the front, we used bust point and then we use under bust, but in this case for the back you're not going to use any of that. So you just use the bust span. You measure that from right here, not from the edge because this is for your zip allowance. You measure it from right here before the zip allowance. You get your bust span. You measure your half length right here. Okay. So what you're going to do now is when you do a skirt normally or you do a dress, you will have a dart. So you're going to come in by like half an inch for your dart, like that. Okay. And it's from here that you're going to extend down to whatever your flare is. Now you may want to measure your front panel, your front center panel, for you to know what the length here is, or you can place the front panel on top of the back piece to get the exact same length of your flare over here. After you cut the center back, the next thing to do is to cut the sides of the back piece. You can take one of the front side piece and use that as a template. However, remember to adjust the upper part so that it corresponds to the center back. To cut the lining, simply use the different pieces as templates. Place them on the lining and cut exactly same thing. I have 4 pieces at the back because we're going to put a zipper, but I'm first going to work on the neckline because we need to do that first, and that will be before I now work on installing the zipper. So I've cut the lining for this as well, and we're also going to put the neckline for the lining. You can put them all together and cut the neckline together. You can see I have joined the front pieces as well as the back pieces. I'm starting with the front piece that I've joined together already. So you just fold them into 2, and then you're going to take the measurement of the neckline that you want to use. I'm doing a width of 3.5, and I'm going to do a length of 4 inches. So again, because I don't want to put too much markings on this, I'm just going to eyeball this and cut the neckline that way. And I'll just place this on the lining and I will cut exactly the same thing. Also, this is what I'm going to do for the back as well. I'm going to use the same exact neckline, except that remember that we have the zipper allowance. So that's where the difference is going to be. But other than that, I'm using the same measurements. I'm going to do a slant for the shoulder. I have aligned the back together, so I have the two lace fabric and the two lining all aligned together, and now we just place the lace fabric for the front fabric. We put it on it, and then we just cut exactly same measurement like I mentioned earlier. Please join me in the final part of this tutorial. I am leaving a link in the description to the part 2 and the concluding part of this tutorial. Please, if you have found this helpful, please leave me a thumbs up, and if you have not yet subscribed, kindly subscribe to this channel. Also, please leave me a comment, as it helps and encourages me to keep bringing you more of these tutorials. Thank you, and see you in the next video.